Hello, today I'm going to talk about the disclosing of the monetary system first part. What is the content? Well, for today, just a brief history of the monetary system, and the next time more about the mechanism of working, about the things that are very influencing our lives day by day, and poverty and so on. So, today the monetary system is more than just a monetary system since it has outgrown itself. Of course, the monetary system and money are essentially physical and neutral from the higher perspective down, but they may cause in the hands of people with the rebellious self more harm than good. Similarly, it is with the nuclear energy, because more than for the generation of electricity, it could be used for nuclear weapons. Thus, the monetary system on Earth is supporting the rebellious self, this rebellious ego, and it is the physical trigger for today's corruption and the many possible conspiracies. In fact, the true corruption has emerged simultaneously with the monetary system and its politics, as without money there is no modern-day real corruption. Thus, our civilization is almost unable to imagine a life without money, even though we well know that our ancestors were living without money. So let's renew the history of the monetary system from its conception up to this day. Let's go back to the distant history when men lived in tribes. Well, in the distant history was the tribes belonging the one that was dominating, and the tribe was the one that was cooperating and caring for survival. The tribe was functioning as a kind of group or commune by the mode of belonging, and what their members needed was predominantly food. So they were hunting by using primitive weapons and here and there also breed some animal. Therefore, the daily routine was dictated by the most basic but also by the most important factor for survival, food. In other words, the struggle for survival was the primary activity in all tribes, while the different tribes were rarely cooperating with each other since they were self-sufficient. Each tribe was concerned only for their own needs. But the civilization progressed on. In fact, the tribes began using more advanced aids and tools. Consequently, the tribes had more time for other activities and began traveling and hunting in larger groups, and so they formed the first villages and more later the first small towns. This caused faster population growth, faster evolution, the complexity of society, and the specialization of individuals around their primary activities, jobs. So each individual was doing what he knew best. This meant that if an inhabitant lived, for example, by the manufacturing of clothing or masonry of houses, he had neither the further knowledge nor the time for hunting or for food cultivation. This was done by others who were specialists in this. So each inhabitant was doing what he loved doing, but especially what he knew best, because there were difficult times, more than today, in certain areas of the world. But there was a problem. There was because of the faster population growth and the complexity of population, there were less and less time for other activities. So, that the manufacturer or a mason got the food for survival, he had to exchange his clothes or masonry services for food. And the exchange was for the inhabitants quite obvious, since they needed other goods and services. This resulted in the barter exchange, this trading. Barter exchange. The barter exchange means the exchange of goods for goods, services for services, and goods for services, and vice versa. This made life much easier, since everyone could be provided but what someone needed at a certain time, and even if that someone didn't manufacture the acquired goods or perform certain services. The life became more flexible, more easy, let's say, and it also allowed to enable faster evolution. However, However, over time it has proved out that the barter is impractical, seized to everyone didn't necessarily correspond to the available goods or services that were available at a certain time. The barter exchange also wasn't practical while traveling, since they had to carry with them large stocks of goods that could be exchanged for other goods such as food. Simply, you, you can became you could become hungry on the road, and so you need food. And so to get food, you need some other services or that you could provide to the others, or let's say just various products that could be exchanged. Further, um, consequently, they have emerged the first non-minted coins with no assigned value. This means with no assigned value means without a number inscribed on a coin. These first non-minted coins facilitated the exchange of goods and services. These coins were thus weighted and considered also as goods. What does it mean? So there with that number, the value of coins was defined by the weight. So they were weighted. It's not like today when we have a number. It doesn't matter the material practically has no value, only the number. But let's go step by step. Okay. Further, some centuries before the common era, our common era, then came into the use also the first minted coins that were widespread in the Greek cities of Asia Minor. So the first coins were non-minted, and then they came the minted coins. But these minted coins still had no assigned value, so that they were still weight. What regarded the material of these coins, they were mostly golden or silver, but also made from copper or other less expensive metals. These coins were also practical because they could be melted and used for various tools. Let's say also household equipment or ornaments. Therefore, that time coins were much more useful than the present alloy coins, but even more than the today banknotes, because today banknotes you can just buy something, but you cannot use them, directly. And also the today coins are made of alloys. This means of compounds of different metals, and can be less used like the ancient coins that were of pure metals, like I said, gold, silver, and so on. And so you melt it at home, these coins, and it can be used for various other items like, say, ornaments, tools, household equipment, and so on. Okay. However, that time coins weren't so widespread because they were affordable mainly by the richer ones, by the richer people. Anyway, this was a progress for civilization as the inhabitants could increasingly travel and migrate. But since that coins were affordable only by a handful of inhabitants, then to those who had no coins while traveling, it often happened the following interesting case. This was one example of that happened many times. So it was. Well, here is an example of a man who was raising chickens for the barter exchange. So he was raising chickens to exchange for other services and goods. This man was one day on a long journey and he became simply hungry. Also, the traveler ran out of his chickens, and furthermore, he had no coins as he was from a lower class or caste. And when he became hungry, he asked an apple dealer along the road if he could get some apples. The traveler added that he is going to repay him with a chicken, however, that it will be repaid in the near future, because he had no chickens with them. The apple dealer trusted him, so that the traveler wrote on a ticket a statement with all the necessary information. Thus, the amount of chickens, let's say just one, the address, and his sign-in. The story went on, and what has happened became interesting. On the same day, the apple dealer went to the market, where he, in one of the stalls, decided to buy clothes. He was offering apples, but the clothing dealer didn't need any. But the apple dealer was ingenious. In fact, he had a ticket which provided a chicken. This piece of paper just. And because the clothing dealer needed precisely a chicken, and because he trusted the apple dealer, then the deal was concluded. As you might notice, the ticket was in one day owned by two owners. It has become a kind of money. The first owner was this chicken dealer, and the second this apple dealer. Well, months went by, and such tickets became more frequent among the inhabitants. They became promissory notes, a kind of promissory notes. They promised something. But have you realized the temptation of the apple and chicken dealer in relation to such promissory notes? Well, if we take for example the chicken dealer, he due to his rebellious self, this rebellious ego became abundant in possessions since he started using the promissory notes for various deals. In fact, over time he submitted so many promissory notes that he promised much more chickens than he was having them at home, so that they are going to be repaid in the near future. Because he had discovered that the notes were very slowly returning home to be repaid with chickens. And the story took place on. The chicken dealer started building his mansion and in return again offered his promissory notes to the Masons. But this man didn't foresee that he has saturated the market so that the chickens were losing its value because there were simply too many promissory notes. You can eat so many chickens a day or a week, simply said. Consequently, in return for his mansion, he had to promise an even greater amount of chickens, and the deal was once again concluded. But the chicken dealer created a situation where the chickens became devaluated, and although he was having just a limited number of chickens at home, and the devaluation of chickens and the subsequent dealing with the promissory notes has resulted in a spiral that is today appointed as the inflation. A very important thing. In other words, this means that the promissory notes of chickens became devalued so that the purchasing power quickly declined. There were simply too many promissory notes. You can eat just one chicken, let's say, a day, or for some days, and so they were devalued. These promissory notes. It's like today when there is too much money in circulation, so that they consequently arises the prices of goods and services. It's similar. If there is too much money, people are of the rebellious ego, and so they want to buy everything, and so they have to rise. The prices of goods and services have to rise. Otherwise, it can come to the depletion of goods. You can produce just a certain amount of goods on the planet because the resources are limited. So, the inflation represents a fall in the purchasing power of money, or promissory notes. While in the vice versa case, you would have the deflation. So it would be too little money in circulation, or too little promissory notes. The prices of goods and services will drop, while the purchasing power of money would increase. Simply, the flow of money must circulate in order that the monetary system is stable, that it works. So if there is too little money, this means that it has power, but and also the manufacturer, the dealers need money, and so they drop a little the prices of goods and services, so that they can get money. Let's go further. But the story of our chicken dealer didn't end there. In fact, over the days, he was visited by many inhabitants with their promissory notes, and this was for him quite a surprise. And because he was having less chickens than he had promised, he announced that his notes are worthy only half of the promised amount, because he wanted to keep a few chickens for the continuation of his business. So, in order to survive, he deliberately created a further devaluation of his notes, although the noted holders weren't pleased by that, simply. And this sudden return of the notes almost led to his bankruptcy and impoverishment. Well, the story of how chicken dealer ended there, and he had to become simply more careful. But there were many cases like this, of course. So what we have learned? You learned about inflation, deflation, the devaluation of money here. Okay, let's go forward with the development of the monetary system and the promissory notes, as the promissory notes didn't represent the money as we know it today. The coins made of gold, silver, copper, or other metals were a close companion of the barter exchange until the 16th century approximately, when there also appeared the first safes, thus the first seats of banking. Anyone could put his coins into the safe and get in exchange the promissory notes of equal value. What does it mean of equal value? Simply put, a paper with an imaginary number or value. Paper has no value. The, the value of the paper is the paper gets value by our definitions and beliefs. We believe that it's worth just such as it just like precisely the number that is written on the paper. But this is just a belief. This is just a definition. And these promissory notes were circulating among the population like money today. So every owner of the promissory note could purchase goods and services. At the same time, they quickly spread the first metal coins with an assigned value. Therefore, again with an imaginary number or value, like with the papers, the banknotes. But the owners of the safes soon discovered something important, that they returned back less than a quarter of the promissory notes, which had to be repaid with coins. This wasn't surprising, since promissory notes were practical and desirable among the population. And because many coins were still lying in the safe, the bankers had the idea that they could give them as loans to the inhabitants who needed quick purchasing power, like today with the loans. However, the loan agreement didn't include coins, as the bankers had the idea that they'd rather release a receipt that will act as a promissory note, therefore again as a kind of money. However, the key difference between the promissory note and the receipt was more than obvious, since for each receipt it had to be paid an interest over time. Thus they emerged the first true loans with interest, but which was something completely new in paying, or rather in the exploitation, as the bankers were keeping their gold and silver coins on. The paper was circulating, the promissory notes and receipts, but the golden coins and silver coins were in the safes. And of course, the coins are more it can be used as paying and uh, as you can melt them and transform into other useful things. Further, it is important to note that the bankers created this paper money virtually out of nothing. Nothing. Firstly, to those who placed the coins into the safe, new promissory notes, and then second, through those who needed loans, new receipts. Thus, the paper itself had no value, but it gained through the inhabitants who accepted the assigned value. Well, these are our well-known beliefs and definitions towards something. They convince us that the paper is worth just like it is written of a certain number, a certain number. So, for example, today banknotes are worth approximately, if you take dollar or euro, let's say 10 cents, less or more. This is work that you produce this money, and the raw materials, paper. And if it's written 500 euros, this is an imaginary number that you accept with your beliefs definitions. Okay, let's go further. Thus, the paper itself had no value, but it gained through the inhabitants who accepted the same value. But not only that they were creating money out of nothing, they were also earning interest from the receipts. So, out of nothing money, you can call it also. Like you would create, let's say, a paper, new kind of money in your country, and you write just a number. But it's very improbable that people are going to accept it as a means of exchange. But so it works. Mhm. Further, however, that wasn't all, as the bankers could do whatever they wanted with the coins in their safe. In fact, what mattered was only that they had in the safe just as much as the inhabitants were gradually reclaiming back. And this minimal amount of coins in the safe or bank that it can still operate, it is called the bank reserve. Now you know another term, the bank reserve. This is a minimum amount of coin that the bank can operate. Otherwise, if the the bank reserve is depleted, this means bankruptcy. However, as I said, less than a quarter of the population was claiming back their coins, which resulted that they were having in the safe even more coins, and at the same time they could issue an increasing number of loans of receipts. As a result, they were having eventually more and more interest money or coins. The growth was progressive. And since the population was obliged to pay for each bag of coins something extra because of interest, it is the imbalance of this system more than obvious. Pay attention here. Because the majority population was slowly losing, while the handful was highly gaining. Of course, if you have to pay much more than you got, you got, this is not, let's say, a just system. But on the other side, if too many promissory notes and receipts will occur in circulation, then it would result in the inflation, like I said, so that would increase the prices of goods and services, while the purchasing power of the promissory notes and receipts would fall. This is deflation. But irrespective of the inflation, the bankers would have at that time a maximum amount of coins in their safe or bank, because they uh, have issued many these receipts and promissory notes. They would become even richer. The crucial thing would be only that they would have to be very careful about the population's sudden reclaim of their savings back in coins, because the coins or today's banknotes define the minimum bank reserve. This bank reserve, because it can happen that the value of promissory notes and receipts will exceed the value of the coins in the safe. In the cases when a serious inflation and savings reclaim back happened, what historically has happened several times, it then always followed a further devaluation of the promissory notes and of the receipts by the bankers, so that they were, for example, worth only the half of the assigned value. Or today it would follow the bank's payout limit, so that a bank would survive. Only in this way would the bankers or banks keep some coins or today's banknotes and survive. So how to bankrupt a bank? It's very simple. We choose one bank in our country, this most, let's say, a commercial bank, of course, commercial bank. Then reclaim all our savings out. But the bankers are clever, so uh, they have this payout limit. It's very simple. How things works. How things work. Funny, but the bankers themselves reduce the value of the promissory notes and receipts which they have previously assigned themselves. And if they wouldn't succeed even in this, then they would empty their reserve in the form of coins or today's banknotes and subsequently went bankrupt. The further picture is probably clear to you, because in the event of bankruptcy, the promissory notes and the receipts would become completely worthless. Because this money is tied to the physical, today's virtual money, this on your bank account is tied to the physical money on the bank. And even this is, let's say, so. Today's money, let's say the money was tied to gold, and this was written on the dollars, I think. I don't know today. Then today is mostly tied to the oil, but most importantly, it is tied to this bank reserve. So let's go step by step. The further picture is probably clear to you because in the event of bankruptcy, the promissory notes and the receipts will become completely worthless. Thus, the middle class will become poor and the poor even poorer. Well, as long as people wouldn't be self-sufficient with their goods and services that would provide them the basic human needs, particularly food. In the case of bankruptcies, throughout the history, new banks were formed and the vicious circle was repeating. Okay, and the last slide for this brief history of the monetary system. So, simply put, to conclude, today's monetary system needs poor and rich people in order to even operate. Or, in other words, a just monetary system is such a monetary system that is not based on interest. That is an interest-free and also a tax-free monetary system in which everyone gets exactly what he's producing or contributing. So, the best loan, the most just loan is so that you pay a certain amount. I mean, you get a certain amount, and then you're going to repay it exactly the same amount without interest, but in such a way today's mechanism of monetary system cannot operate. So, simply put, today's monetary system needs poor and rich people in order to even operate. So, as long as it exists today, monetary system, an interest monetary system, and taxes, we cannot get rid of poverty. It simply works so. You cannot. At least in some countries, you can get rid of poverty. But then, let's say, when a country that was impoverished, it gets, let's say, richer and richer and richer. This country is living on the expense of other countries. So the richer countries today are living on the expense of other countries. For example, if a country is very rich in goods, in GDP, this means that it is producing a lot. The prices, let's say, are high, but the raw materials that are coming to this country is coming from other countries. And often they buy such raw materials at a very low price. So, and also the working force is from other countries. Even the sub-assemblies of certain brands are made in other countries. So this rich country is living on the expense of other poor countries. Pay attention to this. So, what you can do in your country? Yes, your country can become rich, but other countries will become poorer and poorer. In order to have or equalize, we must have a interest-free monetary system and also a tax-free monetary system. This is the best possible. But in the future, in the not so distant future, the future is not in a monetary system, but in a non-monetary system, in natural economy. So, in a free exchange of goods and services, but not like the barter exchange. In other way, in other ways, I will explain in the further lectures. So this is the most important to know that until they exist interests, until then there is going to exist poverty. And it doesn't matter of the UNICEF, Amnesty International, and so on. No, even some people of these organizations are corrupt. Okay, that's all for today. We have some basics, very important basics. In the next lecture, I will going to talk more about today's mechanism, more precisely how it's working. This virtual money, this central banking. Yes. Okay, have a nice day. Bye bye.